Thank you. So, welcome to everybody to tonight's full council meeting of the Rother District Council. Could I please just remind members to make sure that all their devices are switched to silent so that we don't have any interruptions during the course of tonight's meeting. Thank you. So, item 1 on the agenda. Do I have your approval to sign the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 24th of May as a correct record of the proceedings? Thank you very much. Do I need to seek a proposal in a second? Okay. Thank you. Item 2 then. Can I ask, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Field.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Proshak is appearing remotely. I can't actually read those names. Isn't that embarrassing? I can't. Okay, right. So item 3 then, disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures by members of a personal and disclosable pecuniary interest in matters on the agenda? If so, please declare the nature of any such interest and whether members regard the personal interest as prejudicial under the terms of the Code of Conduct. Councillor Thomas.
Chair, I wish to declare an interest as the Chair of the Rother District Housing Company in relation to agenda item 9, and it's not a prejudicial interest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. In terms of agenda item 12 and agenda item 14, since both involve potentially East Sussex County Council, I'll declare a personal, not a prejudicial interest as an executive member of East Sussex County Council, as I say, agenda items 12 and 14.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Kirby-Green.
Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to declare that I'm an East Sussex County Councillor in relation to items 12 and 14.
Thank you very much. Are there any other... Lorna.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare an interest in item 13, appointment of the Chief Executive. I will leave the room for this item.
Thank you very much. No further declarations of interest. Just a gentle reminder, I know we all know, could we reiterate our interests at the time the matter is to be discussed? Thank you. Chairman's communications. It is with sadness that I begin my communications on a sad note, as I report the death of former councillor David Vereker, who was a councillor from 1999 to 2015, and indeed his name is on there on the board, where he was chairman to this council in 2004 to 5. So I would like to invite Councillor Eleanor Kirby-Green and Councillor Carl Maynard to speak, and I will close with some recollections by Councillor Sue Proshak before we stand for a minute's silence in respect. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to speak and pay tribute to David. Not many in the chamber will remember David, but I can assure you, if you ever met David Vereker, you would certainly know it, because David was absolutely an individual. He was fiercely intelligent. He was very much, I think the polite way of saying it is old school, but David wouldn't necessarily want me to be polite, because David delighted in being controversial. I might add, not at the expense of him doing the job well, because as I've discussed this with colleagues earlier, I think he probably served on the planning committee longer than anybody else, either before or since. His entire term on Rother, he joined the council in 99 at the same time as myself and obviously a number of others. And I think he spent 16 years on the planning committee. And as many officers will remember, who were obviously conversing with David across the table, if David thought that his point was right, he would argue absolutely to the nth degree in terms of making sure that he got his point across loud and clear. He always challenged officers in a friendly but very robust manner, in the same way that he challenged other councillors in the same way. But he was very well respected, very well liked, a man who spent his retirement years in public service, as I'm sure Eleanor will also add to that, both at the local level and indeed here at District Council. He was a very, very good chairman. Good is, I think, too loose a word to describe him, but he was a very industrious chairman of the District Council when he had that opportunity. And anybody who remembers David will also remember the mischievous way when we were paying tribute to him as chairman. I can remember only David could get away with walking around the room giving people prizes for the most improved councillor, the best dressed councillor, and so it went on. It was tongue-in-cheek because that was David's humour. He knew when to have fun and he knew when to be serious. And I have to say, in terms of ambassador for his local ward, he did an enormous amount and absolutely was fighting for every resident. And whilst David came from a very privileged background, those of you who remember him will remember him as an old Etonian and somebody who went to Cambridge and clearly was a man who came from a privileged background. But I can honestly say, without any threat of contradiction, that whether somebody was of limited means or they were extremely wealthy, he represented his ward constituents to the best of his ability, regardless of their background. And on planning matters, I have to say, he was absolutely outstanding and always contributed to the debate, always fought hard for his local ward. So, personally speaking, I have many, many amusing memories of David, some of which I couldn't possibly repeat in the chamber tonight in this formal setting. But I look forward to paying tribute to David and joining family and friends at his funeral on the 10th of August. But I can honestly say that the world is a poorer place without David here. He was quite simply an exceptional individual. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. As someone said recently, David was an urbane, old-school gentleman with an extremely naughty sense of humour. I grew close to David when I stood in the Darwell by-election in 2014. David took me under his wing and enjoyed introducing a youngish, compared to him, female candidate to all those I needed to know in the ward. Over the next year, we had great fun being co-councillors, regularly travelling to Bexhill together, both desperate to drive as we didn't think much of the others driving. When David decided to stand down the following year, he ran Emily and my campaign along with Michael, whom we've also recently lost. The two of them put together a timetable which involved 13 days straight of delivering. The ward is very large, each day factoring in a convivial lunch at one of the many lovely pubs in the ward. Emily and I were relieved that we were spending the other 6 hours a day delivering leaflets, otherwise we would have gone off a dress size. Over the following years, I'd regularly update DV on the goings-on at Rother. I know he particularly missed the Democratic Services team and Jane McCulloch. Despite his health, David insisted on continuing to help deliver election literature, most recently chauffeuring me. One morning, upon entering Burwash High Street, there was some sort of congestion ahead. David, being David, decided to drive on the opposite side of the road, and after a while we ended up passing a funeral cortege and drove along the empty high street lined with mourners, with David oblivious to all the mayhem he had caused. David was loved by those in Burwash across the political divide and respected for his hard work and involvement in the local community. He served on the parish council for over 30 years. Whilst chairman of Burwash Parish Council, he became close to the parish clerk. The three of us would regularly meet for lunch, and he would love to listen to everything that was going on. He entertained us over a few weeks ago when he proudly showed us his newly finished pond, which to his delight had attracted much wildlife. A member of Democratic Services said last week that David always had a twinkle in his eye, and that's why I think all those who knew him will remember him.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Sue Proshak has just echoed an awful lot of what these two councillors have said. Councillor Proshak comments, he was a doughty fighter for his village and his ward. He spoke as he thought and did not mince his words. He was courteous and friendly to all council members of whichever party and recognised the good in each of them, irrespective of politics. He was a powerful advocate for parish councils generally, serving for a long time on Burwash Parish Council as member and chairman. As Rother's chairman, he completed his year with awards for both staff and members. It was a memorable occasion. So now I invite you all to please join me in standing, if you are able, to reflect on the words we have just heard. Thank you. It has been lovely to meet our new councillors at trainings and meetings and around the coffee table, and I commend you all for your commitment, absorption of council rules and procedures. Many experienced councillors also attend, and it's good to be reminded of our standing orders and codes of conduct as this new term begins. As chairman to this council, both I and my vice chairman, Councillor Richard Thomas, have been busy attending events and functions to meet new mayors and council chairmen, as well as to hear about some of the charities across Rother District. We both attended the big summer sing at the Delaware Pavilion, where 200 school children filled the stage with their smiles and waves, and the auditorium with their voices for an hour's concert as part of Bexhill Festival of Music. I was fortunate to attend the last night too, in a packed auditorium, joining the flag wavers and singing with patriotic gusto. Sorry, Councillor Timpey, I believe you were behind me. I attended the Polish War Memorial Day at Netherfield as the Mayor of Battle, and I feel this is something that Rother should be represented at in the future. In June, I was away in the Holy Land working with a school in Ramallah in Palestine, and I'm grateful that Councillor Thomas was able to represent Rother on all our behalves at events he will tell you about in a moment. On my return, I held a meeting with Mr. Richard Bickersteth, High Sheriff of East Sussex, to discuss issues facing Rother, but in particular those in rural Rother and those involving young people's groups. He's keen to meet and open discussions about issues in your wards, so please contact me if you would like either of us to attend events, present awards, or just meet with leaders. Later that same week, I attended the reception at Buxted Park Hotel at the invitation of Peter Pragnell, the chairman of East Sussex County Council, wearing both my chains. These events are so useful for networking and getting to know issues and events, and some inspirational ideas that affect and benefit those in our neighbouring towns and districts. Another such event was the Bishop of Chichester reception, held in the Marquee in the Palace Gardens. I attended one on the Monday in a personal capacity as a holder of the award of St Richard, but sadly I was so delayed by traffic in Worthing that I missed the second one. Undoubtedly, the highlight so far was the event instigated by Councillors Coleman and Stanger to invite the school council of All Saints Church of England Primary School to visit the Town Hall chamber. Councillor Thomas also attended and assisted with a lively debate inspired by the children's desire to improve Sidley. I fear my job is at risk by a takeover by one particular young lady who sat in this chair and with great authority banged the gavel. If any councillors wish to involve their local primary or secondary school, please do speak to one of us. I'm now going to invite Vice Chairman Councillor Richard Thomas to talk about his visits he's made.
Thank you, Chair. During the absence of the Chair, I deputised for her at some events that she's invited me to report on. The first of these was at Sudwells, an example of the green industry in rural Rother. The company manufactures permeable paving made from repurposed materials, including plastics generally considered hard to recycle. The event marked a move from a manual to a machine-based process, enabled in part by a grant from this council, exactly the kind of business that our climate emergency policy seeks to encourage. The second visit also featured Studwell. The company generously donated its product to form the base of 2 play areas at Demelza, a charity which helps children with serious or life-limiting conditions, along with members of their families. The charity does stupendous work to help its clients at critical points, bringing joy and pleasure into their young lives. Another group whose lives are marred by circumstances beyond their control is refugees. As part of Refugee Week, I attended a celebration in Sevenoaks of the contribution that compassionate and welcoming communities can make to the lives of refugees. a heartwarming testimony to the effect of well-organised, focused support on people who had suffered through no fault of their own. And this is another group supported by Rother. My next visit was to Littlegate Farm, a charity which helps young people with special needs, especially but not exclusively autism. I heard stories of children so badly traumatised that they'd become elected mutes, but had so flourished in the creative environment, the safe environment of the farm, that they'd been able to become self-sufficient and gain paid employment. Another organisation supported by Rother. The last function, which I attended very briefly because I was late, was the Forces charity ABF. What was most impressive were the sufficiency and speed in getting help to those in need. By working through local organisations, it aimed to provide help in a matter of days. In conclusion, these visits impressed upon me just how much goodness there is in our district and our world, just how much compassion there is, how much caring for the planet and its inhabitants, especially those who are most in need, and how Rother District Council is often in the background, knitting the community together and enabling these organisations to function and flourish. And now I think Vicky is going to say a bit more about Littlegate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So as you've just heard, one of the visits Councillor Thomas made was to Littlegate Farm in Beckley. And I'm pleased to announce this as the Chairman's Charity of the Year. All of you will have received some information about this, and I intend to arrange a visit for all of us to discover more and hear about the amazing work they do supporting young people into employment. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary at a black tie dinner and dance event at the Couden Beach on the 14th of October, and I hope some of you may join me at a table or two to support their fundraising. Thank you. So moving on then to item 5, to answer questions from members of the public, if any, in accordance with paragraph 10 of the Council Procedure Rules. Is Mr. Marvin Elliott in the room? Sir, thank you. Would you like to stand and ask your question? Would you like to read it out?
Maybe I understood wrongly, but I thought that the question would have been circulated to everybody and then the answer would have just been given to me.
It has been circulated, you're quite correct, but we do allow members of the public to ask their question if they desire to. If you are quite content that we've all read your question, I could then respond to Councillor Rathbone Ariel to respond to you.
Well, I'll just read the last paragraph, if that's all right.
Thank you.
If the UK government has failed to fulfil its legal requirements, do the public have a moral right to question the legal validity of council tax payments when their district council have declared a climate emergency?
Thank you very much. Councillor Rathbone Ariel.
Thank you.
Could I ask you to stand, sir, please? Thank you.
I'll give the answer in full for you. In terms of climate change, we obviously now have a portfolio position. Indeed, that's why I'm answering this question. So as part of the Council's commitment to the climate change agenda and our net zero ambitions, we've recruited 2 new climate officers. The Green Team was established and set to work on projects to promote climate awareness and action among staff, such as developing a workplace environmental policy and measuring and addressing staff travel emissions. In November 2022, the Council participated in a Count to Carbon Zero sprint, a 10-day initiative to promote lifestyle changes that support net zero. Other environmental projects initiatives in 2022-23 include creation of an urban project 1066, the number and condition of the trees in Bexhill, and along the trees planting strategy for Bexhill. The council and partners also planted 250 trees and 1,500 whips. The council's community grants application forms have been updated to include environmental considerations and impacts. £15,000 is ring-fenced from the 2023-24 community grant scheme for reduce, reuse and recycle grants. 500k from the SIL Climate Emergency Bonus Fund was awarded to the Village Halls Energy Project, which will reduce the carbon emissions of community halls across Rotherham. And by 2023, 95 households in the district had installed solar arrays via the Sold Together group purchase schemes. That took place in 2020 and 21. A further round took place in spring 23 and attracted a record number of registrants. In March, we began an audit of 24 of the council's large green and rural assets with a view of providing a biodiversity baseline and future recommendations for their management to achieve ecological improvements. The council assessed the feasibility of installing electric vehicle charging points in council-owned car parks. 7 car parks are viable and a supplier has been procured. The council's Rotherham Reduce, Reuse, Recycle grants scheme has been launched. And climate mitigation and adaptation are key to the new local plan development, and the corporate plan recognises the climate emergency as a key priority. And indeed, officers are working afresh on a new environmental climate strategy and climate action plan, which will hopefully be launched further later in the year, which will demonstrate the council is not waiting for an action plan, it's already delivering on the climate action. The council made a pledge to support the council's aspirations as follows: pledge to do what is within our powers to make Rotherham District carbon neutral by 2030, take into account both production and consumption emissions. The pledge is not legally binding, however, and there are no direct correlations with council tax setting. The council is using its powers to reduce emissions and will continue to do so. This task could be produced and progressed more quickly if there was more specific funding available, but the council continues to access external funding wherever possible, whilst also identifying internal resources to help take forward this vital, important agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ariel. Can I ask, did you have a supplementary question to ask Mr. Elliott?
Is that it? Really? I've gone through the websites. I've looked at things like carbon literacy courses. Not one person has asked, in all my correspondence with you and the government, what it takes to build an environmentally sound house. I assume you all know what it takes to build one of those houses. Is that correct? Would anybody like to hazard a guess at what you have to do to build a 95% efficient home?
Yeah. Mr. Elliott, I'm afraid you can only address your question to Councillor Ariel. Thank you. Our second question tonight is from Mr. Bernard Brown to Councillor Oliver. Mr. Brown, would you like to read your question in full?
Well, I'm quite happy for the questions to have been read by everybody and just receive Councillor Oliver's reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Brown. It's nice to see you. Firstly, I do not agree, accept the fact that the governance of either the project nor the housing company has failed. You would have referred to the last Cabinet report earlier this month, which made it clear the significant economic challenges that have been faced while trying to deliver this project. The project has been brought forward a site that has remained undeveloped for decades, and we will still deliver 200 much-needed homes in Battle, a significant success for this council. Whilst we have indicative costings for the infrastructure element of the scheme, these are yet to be confirmed. within the context of the wider project. A full paper will be coming to Cabinet in the coming months, which will outline to the public the full cost of the scheme and any funding requirement from the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Mr Brown, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Oliver arising out of the answer given?
I do, Madam. I hope you don't mind if I don't stand. Thank you, sir. Right, I thank Councillor Oliver for his courteous reply. I regret it's not very informative, however. In the last 2 months, for at least 2 months, the Companies House Register, which deals with recording of legal changes to directors, has been unupdated. In that time, we've had directors leave the company and join the company. I find it somewhat surprising it's only today that the Companies House Register has been updated to record the 2 ex-councillors who have left the company. These are legal requirements. They're part of legal governance and they've not been performed. The service level agreement, which was supposed to delineate between the council and the housing company, has been unprepared, unpublished for 21 months.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr Brown. Is there a question?
There most definitely is a question, Madam. I'm trying to identify the 2 areas in governance and 2 areas in costs that haven't been addressed.
Thank you.
It's reported that loans of over £3 million have been given from the council to the housing company, but without any legal agreement. So much for governance. In February, it was disclosed the Spine Road and infrastructure costs were 15.8 million, 3.6 million over budget. Independent expert informed opinion calculates that's now 19.5 million. Even with drastic changes to housing design, the project is designed, designated to have a substantial loss. At the moment, the project is decided as not viable. That's in paragraph 20 of the report to Cabinet. I asked the leader to revisit his answer. Will he now accept there have been serious legal failures in governance? And will he just tell the public what are the full costs for the Spine Road and infrastructure? And if it helps, maybe he can just confirm the estimated costs are over 19.5 million with a projected loss in excess of 5 million.
Thank you very much, Mr Brown. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much indeed for that further question. I'm really not in the position to have that attention to detail to actually answer you now, Mr Brown, but I will actually, after this meeting, ensure that those matters are attended to, with the matter with regard to governance and the matter with regard to the overspend. So perhaps we can correspond and I'll come back to you at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Thank you, Mr Brown, for submitting your question. You may remain for the rest of the meeting, should you wish to. Otherwise, you're free to leave. Thank you. Our third question tonight is from Mr Curtis, again to Councillor Oliver. Mr Curtis, would you like to read out your question in full?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, the question has already been distributed, so I'm happy for the leader to give the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and it's nice to see you this evening, Mr Curtis. The answer, as I can relate to you, is there is an 80 million provision within the capital programme for loans to the housing company over future years for various potential schemes, including Blackfriars, which has been in the capital programme for a number of years now and has previously been approved. The proposal was always to fund this provision through borrowing. The loans and interest payments will be funded by the housing company and covered by the disposal of homes as they are completed, and as such there is no direct impact on the council's finances in terms of funding this provision. In terms of the actual borrowing undertaken by the council to facilitate the development, we will endeavour to minimise borrowing costs to the housing company whenever we can by exploring the best sources of funding available at the time they are required, whilst also minimising the length of time funding is provided based on cash flow requirements, which will help to keep the borrowing costs for the company as low as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Mr Curtis, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Oliver arising out of the answer given?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would. And I'd like to thank the leader for his response. I have a supplementary question. The leader reconfirms in his answer that all funding for the housing company and the Blackfriars project will come from borrowing. I would ask him to clarify his answer further. In the report to Cabinet, it says £4 million has been advanced to cover sunk costs. The report says another £4 million will be required by the end of this financial year, a minimum total of £8 million. For clarification, has the current £4 million been borrowed, and if so, from what source? When the confidential business plan was approved by the Council Public Works Loan Board, interest rates were less than 1.5%. Currently, they are in excess of 5%. Can the leader confirm the financing cost for planned expenditure to April 2024 at £8 million of borrowing has increased by £280,000 from £120,000 to £400,000? Assuming extremely effective cash flow management is achieved and a speculative reduction in interest rates to 3.75% from August 2024, it is estimated there will be a minimum increase in financing costs of the project of £2,475,000. This is equivalent to £12,375 per housing unit. In the public interest, will this matter be referred for urgent attention by both the Overview and Scrutiny and Audit and Standards Committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Curtis. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think you'll find that the information that you're seeking will come out on our next report that is due in the coming months. Hopefully September, but it may be slightly later than that. But I think you'll find that the information that you'll be requiring will be covered off in that report.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Mr Curtis, thank you for submitting your question. You may remain for the rest of the meeting, should you so wish. Otherwise, you're free to leave. Our fourth and final question tonight from a member of the public is from Mrs Blagrove to Councillor Timpey. Mrs Blagrove, would you like to read out your question in full?
Hello. Yes, I would. Yes. For the sake of the people on the live stream, I think it's important they hear the question. So recently, in a bid to make cutbacks, RDC have been removing flowers from areas in the town, such as the Town Hall Square, and grassing it over to save gardening costs. It is also planned to do the same in the Garden of Remembrance at Bexhill Cemetery. I have today submitted a petition with approximately 800 signatures to the council, showing the public are not happy about this at all. The petition will ask the council to rethink this, as it also impacts wildlife when flowers are taken away. Please can the Cabinet portfolio holder for the Neighbourhood Services explain the rationale for this decision? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Councillor Timpey, would you please reply?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mrs Blagrove. I'll read out the answer so that the live stream people can also hear it. To support in reducing the Council's budget deficit, while also considering environmental impact and biodiversity, in May this year, the Council discontinued planting seasonal bedding plants in several locations around Bexhill. A small area of bedding in the cemetery's Garden of Remembrance was included in this. In total, these changes are forecast to save the council around £47,000 per annum. Traditional seasonal bedding in the district is now confined to the war memorials, the roadside entrances to Bexhill, and a reduced area in Manor Gardens. Whilst annual bedding plants can create an attractive floral display, they have very little wildlife value, a negative environmental impact in terms of the associated production process and waste, and the displays, which are generally short-lived, are labour-intensive to maintain and require large amounts of water. In the Garden of Remembrance, rabbit damage was a common occurrence. Where the Garden of Remembrance is concerned, RDC proposes to plant spring flowering bulbs in the coming autumn, both in the former bed locations and elsewhere within the garden. Additionally, the large rose bed, which is sparsely planted, will be enhanced with a selection of plants to create a permanent display, requiring significantly less ongoing maintenance and offering a food source for pollinators. It's considered that rather than detracting from the setting, this will in fact enhance the area. Elsewhere in the town where the bedding has been discontinued, RDC proposes to introduce a variety of different perennial wildflower mixes. This is a more sustainable approach, both environmentally and financially, to providing attractive floral displays which so many residents and visitors to the town enjoy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Timpey. Mrs Blagrove, did you wish to ask a supplementary question to that answer you've just been given?
Yes, I certainly would. Thank you. Thank you for your reply to my question, Councillor Timpey. It was fairly worrying to see you declare that bedding plants have no value to wildlife. This is certainly not the view of RHS, nor wildlife authorities, including Sir David Attenborough. The rabbits have lived in that cemetery longer than the current tenants, but suddenly they seem to be part of the reason for removing flowers. Bexhill is in decline in many ways, and it is sad to see our once pretty little town and cemetery have the flowers removed. They bring much joy to residents and visitors alike, so my question is in two parts, if I may. Number one, must the townspeople just roll over and accept this move by RDC? Because whilst we all understand hard times can mean making changes that would be necessary, we are also mindful of the amount of money that has been wasted on projects such as the town hall redevelopment plans at a cost of £700,000 plus, along with other vanity projects.
Could you please confine your question to the flowers in the cemetery, please?
Yes, I'm sorry to take it that way, but you know we're being told that you're making cuts. You're saving £47,000. We realise the council is £3 million in deficit. How are you going to make the rest of that up?
Your question relating to Councillor Timpey, please.
Thank you. That is my question in full. Thank you.
Councillor Timpey, would you like to reply? Could you sit down, please, sir? Thank you.
I'm not sure I quite understand whatever questions there were there. I can't respond to questions that don't relate to the cemetery and your concerns about that. I've answered specifically what we're doing. That's all I can say, Madam Chairman.
For their courtesy in sending their question to us in advance so we could research their answers. Thank you very much. So moving on then to item 6 on the agenda, to answer questions from members of the council. I cannot take any other questions, and if there is a disruption to my meeting, I shall ask you all to leave. Please, would you sit down? I ask again, please, would you sit down? In which case then, members, I will adjourn the meeting and we will remove ourselves to the committee room until the public gallery is cleared. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Are you sure? As it says Oliver on. Okay, no problem. Councillor Timpey, hello. So as the dog consultation closes today, and it's just to confirm that the council understands that the following considerations when reviewing dog control in Canberra. and it's the houses in front of the Suttons have actually got access to median high tide on their deeds. So legally, they can't actually be prevented from walking dogs on the beach. So then adding the extra sort of dog control measures would put more pressure on the beach staff, which is something that Councillor Osborne and I are really worried about as they're at capacity. And then charities like the Dogs Trust, who currently walk dogs from Broomhill Car Park, the proposed changes would actually prevent them from doing so, and there are some concerns in the village about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hacking. Councillor Timpey, do you have an answer?
There is an answer, but I don't have it in front of me. But I do know that the Suttons has been noted, as has the Dogs Trust, and the Broomhill has been noted by Richard Parker Harding. As far as everything else goes, I think we just wait for the consultation results, which will be shared, and then we can have a look at how the public have responded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timpey. Councillor Hacking, did you have a supplementary question arising from that answer given?
Not a question, but just say thank you for noting that, and hopefully residents will be reassured.
Thank you. Item 7, to receive the reports of the Cabinet on matters for determination by full Council at its meetings held on the 12th of June and the 17th of July. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to move that reports of the Cabinet meetings held on the 12th of June and the 17th of July 2023 be approved and adopted.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor G1. I will now call over the reports. If members wish to reserve an item for discussion, please indicate as I call them over. 12th of June 2023, Cabinet Minute 23/04, Net Zero Pledge for UK 100 membership. Okay, thank you. 17th of July 2023, Cabinet Minute 23/14, the Revenue Budget and Capital Programme Monitoring Draft 2022 to 23 outturn. Thank you. Cabinet Minute CB 23/15, the UK Shared Prosperity and Rural England Prosperity Fund. Thank you. And Cabinet Minute CB 23/16, 1066 Country Marketing. So as none of these minutes have been reserved for discussion, and they have already been moved and seconded, I shall now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please show your hand. Okay. Yep, that's carried then. Do I need to note abstentions and against? Okay, thank you. So moving on then to item 8, to receive the inaugural annual report of the Audit and Standards Committee on ethical standards matters. Councillor Drayson.
Thank you, Chair. By including the word inaugural, you've taken away the only thing I was going to say, really. This is the first time under the Constitution that the committee have put forward a report covering its work done in relation to standards. There is, hot off the press, there will be one coming in September on the audit work that we've done, partly to help raise the profile of the audit and standards. But this report speaks for itself, so I actually commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drayson. Is there a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Gray, Councillor Stanger. Does anybody want to ask any questions of Councillor Drayson on this report? Thank you very much. In which case, then, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Looks like everybody. That's carried as well. Thank you very much indeed. So, item 9, to receive the report of the Interim Chief Executive on the appointment of a director of the Rother District Council Housing Company. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to move the report of the Interim Chief Executive to be approved and adopted.
Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Stanger. Are there any other nominations to serve as company directors, as well as the nomination of Councillor Cooper as set out in the report? Please note, though, members need to be sitting councillors, and they need to be a substantive member. They cannot be a substantive member of the Planning Committee. So I ask again, are there any other nominations? We can accept up to 2. Okay then. So I will now put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Welcome, Councillor Cooper, and thank you for your willingness to stand in to this role. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, Councillor Barnes.
Before we leave this item, the Constitutional Housing Company requires 4 directors. We currently have no further nominations. And of course, that also controls the appointment of the outside experts as non-executives, because, again, they cannot be in a majority according to our Constitution. So could we have some indication of how you propose to go forward to make sure the board is brought up to strength?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Barnes. Do you want to take this, Ben? Yes, Mr. Hook.
Thank you. Unorthodox, I know, but thank you very much. I'm aware, obviously, that the company now has, following this, now 2 councillor directors and 2 non-executive directors under the terms of the Articles of Association and the terms of the shareholders' agreement. That is sufficient for the running of the company as long as they meet quorum for each of the individual meetings. It's not a requirement that there be a majority of council directors. It's just a requirement that the non-executive directors do not outnumber the council directors.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Barnes? And then I'm going to come to Councillor Biggs and then Councillor Maynard.
I don't think it probably is not the place to pursue this, but I'm not entirely happy because the reason we went for as many as 4 non-executive directors was to provide the board with a range of skills. And while I have no doubt that the 2 that have been appointed have relevant skills, it does narrow down the range of non-external advice available to the company. And it is actually a slightly odd situation where your quorum has actually always to be present. If anybody's absent, you're going to have no quorum whatsoever, which does put the board in quite a difficult position.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas, did you want to respond to that? And then I'll come back to Councillor Biggs, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And can I repeat my declaration of a personal interest, non-pecuniary interest, in relation to this matter? Firstly, I think you will find that the Constitution doesn't say we have to have 4. It says it has to be up to 4. And so having 2 is within the Constitution. The second point I would make is that, yes, we would be hoping to have other directors come forward during the course of the coming months. But I think it's important to stress that we have been able to recruit 2 non-executive directors, both of whom have very substantial and deep experience of the housing industry. And so we have an expert board in that sense. And my third point is that at the last meeting of the board, we passed a resolution that we would set up an advisory board. And I already have maybe as many as 10 people willing to give advice to the housing company on specific issues on which they have expertise. So I'm satisfied that there is sufficient expertise. And finally, can I point out that we have a COO who has a long track record of experience in the housing industry and who has a very considerable reputation both locally and nationally. Thank you for your question, Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Chair. On the meeting on the 30th of June, was it? There was a board meeting. So am I right in saying that there was more non-executives than councillors there? Because I would have thought you would have had equal amount, or at least 2 councillors and 2 non-execs, because it seems strange if any votes were taking place, the non-executive could have the majority vote.
Okay, thank you. I've been advised that that's actually a matter for not for the council, but for the company. So we'll take your question to the company and they will respond. Thank you.
Sorry, I can't understand that. Surely if we're at council, I'm asking a question, it's to do with the housing, rather housing. No?
Councillor Thomas.
Chair, if I can just reply to that. It's an extremely important distinction, actually, between what is a matter for the council and what is a matter for the company. And the reason why that is extremely important has been underlined by our solicitors, by one of the leading housing solicitors in the country. It is important that we retain our status as what is called a non-contracting authority. If we lose that status, we could be open to legal challenge in relation to procurement. And so it is important to make that distinction. And so I repeat what Ben Hook has said, this is a matter for the company and not for the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We've proposed and seconded that, and we have carried the motion. So I will move on, if I may please, to item 10, to receive and note the report of the Interim Chief Executive on a change to committee membership. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To move the report of the Interim Chief Executive be received, in so much as the change to committee membership, Councillor Burton comes off, Councillor Gray goes on audit and standards.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Stanger. Thank you. So I will now put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. So item 11, to receive the report of the Interim Chief Executive on appointment to members on outside bodies. So this is for the Bexhill Maritime and the Rural Services Network. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to move the report of the Interim Chief Executive be approved and adopted, that Councillor Timpey be appointed to Bexhill Maritime and Councillor Projak be appointed to the Rural Services Network as substantive and substitute members, respectively.
Thank you. It's been pointed out to me, Councillor Oliver, do we need to appoint you to Bexhill Maritime and the Rural Services Network as a substitute? Is that correct?
If that's what it says, then yes.
Okay, it's slightly difficult wording here. So it's Councillor Timpey to Bexhill Maritime and Councillor Proshak and Councillor Oliver to the Rural Services Network. Yes. Got that right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Can we have a seconder for that, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. Are there any other nominations to serve on these outside bodies? No. Okay. So as there are no other nominations, Councillor Timpey, Oliver and Proshak are appointed to these respective outside bodies. Thank you very much indeed for your willingness to give up your time to serve these essential services. Item 12 then, to receive the report of the Interim Chief Executive on an appointment to Hastings and Bexhill Renaissance. Thank you, Councillor Maynard and Councillor Kirby-Green.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to redeclare personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to I'd like to move the report and nominate Councillor Bayliss to the position of an appointment to the Hastings and Bexhill Renaissance.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Coleman, thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? No. Okay, as there are no other nominations, Councillor Bayliss is duly appointed as this council's representative on the Hastings and Bexhill Renaissance Limited. And I thank you too for your willingness to serve on this external body. Thank you. So item 13, to receive and consider the recommendation of the Senior Officers Appointment Panel regarding the appointment of the Chief Executive. Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to move the report and recommendation of the Senior Officer Appointment Panel to be approved. And I would like to thank the panel for the work that they've done over these last 6 or 7 weeks in filtering the applications of interest, the applications that were registered, the long list, then the short list, and the panel meeting last week at which a decision was made. There was an awful lot of background information to be dealt with there, and I really am very, very grateful to the members of the panel in sharing that workload and being able to deal with it in the way that we have done. The outcome of this is I'm actually delighted to say that Lorna Ford has been offered the job, subject to ratification here this evening, and I think that she will serve this authority well. She has the enthusiasm and she has the desire to take us forward to where this council wishes to be over these next few years. So really it's a delightful outcome, and thank you for my colleagues that helped me during that process.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Oh, lots of people. You choose, Lisa. Are there any questions? Is there to be any debate? Councillor Gray, did you wish to speak?
I would just like to second this and to say that I think we've made a wise choice. I would also like to say that the staff also had Lorna as their first choice. So it's a good choice, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Excellent. Unanimous. Thank you very much. That's carried then. And I will ask Mr. Hook to invite her in. Yes, thank you. So on behalf of all of us, Lorna, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are we to expect a speech?
Oh, I haven't prepared one.
Okay. So item 14 then, I believe we have a question, a motion from Councillor Barnes. Councillor Barnes.
We declare my interest.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Chairman, I think I can be fairly brief on this one, but we found ourselves in some difficulties at planning meetings recently because we are told that we have not got sufficient traveller sites available. We were forced, therefore, to actually give a personal and very restricted 3-year temporary planning permission to a particular site, which has been clearly ruled actually contrary to policy, but nevertheless the personal circumstances of the applicant mean that we really had to agree. Again, appeal decisions have gone against us because there is an absence of available sites. I would remind the Council that we have duties under the various Housing Acts. Under the Housing Act 2004, we have to assess the needs of the traveller community as part of our total community. And indeed, we have to then take steps to make sure there is appropriate accommodation for them. If you go back to the 1996 housing legislation, you will actually find that a traveller in a caravan or some mobile vehicle who is not available, for whom a site is not available, is rendered homeless, and therefore something that we need to consider as part of our homeless policy. So, in every respect, it seems to me that we do need to actually realise that we are falling short of our duties. What is odder, I think, is that we have 5 pitches designated at Watermill Lane, 2 of which already have outline planning permission, and these are not available. And when one asks about it, one is told that the owner, company of which we are technically a member, will not make them available. Our previous joint chief executives gave a promise back in 2021, I think, to the group at Netherfield, that if needs be, we will bring those sites into operation by compulsory purchase. We are now 3 years on, getting on for 3 years. We're faced with difficult planning decisions. We know that County has just published a report which actually suggests our deficiency is going to be even greater than we currently anticipated. I think the reason for the 3 years was because we actually are going to have to tackle this problem in the local plan. But it really is time, I think, that we honoured the promise given by Lorna's predecessors and actually brought these 5 pitches into being so that we can accommodate the travellers on sites that are properly planned for, rather than actually rely on what is fly-by-night sites which are singled out by applicants, and then we measure them against our policy and find they fall short. I so move, therefore, my resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I wonder if, for the benefit of those watching on a live stream, you would be kind enough to actually read out your full motion in full, please. For the benefit of those watching on live stream, I wonder if you would be kind enough to read out your motion in full, please.
The Council asks the Executive to ensure that the 5 pitches allocated in the Development and Site Allocation Local Plan for gypsies and travellers at Watermill Lane, 2 of which already have outline planning permission, are brought into use within the next 18 months. I so move.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnes. Is there a seconder for this motion?
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. I'm going to open this up now to debate. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to commend Councillor Barnes' apparent interest in GRT provisions, though a cynic might argue that this is more about shifting existing GRT families out of the AONB and into Sidley, as was likely the case with the original Planning Commission. In any case, I believe this motion is both flawed and unnecessary, and I'll tell you for why. Firstly, this motion is flawed because it asks the impossible. The Executive cannot ensure a private piece of land is used for a particular purpose, especially not within 2 years. But Councillor Barnes knows this. He and I were there at planning on the 22nd of June when it was explained why the GRT allocations in Watermill Lane were not considered viable as part of the Council's provision due to the site's private ownership. He will also be aware that the PPTS emphasises immediacy when it comes to site availability, rendering complicated sites like those at Watermill Lane with land ownership issues as less preferable than they may have been years hence when the DASA was first drafted. Trying to resolve these issues in 2 years, whether compulsory purchase or otherwise, is unrealistic. Second, this motion is unnecessary. Since the Lisa Smith judgment and the county's new GTAA plan, it has become clear the district's GRT provision needs fully reviewing, I agree. This is why GRT allocations across Rother are being considered as part of the current local plan process. As the Council is already looking into GRT provision in Rother, including the viability of the Watermill Lane site, there's no need to supersede that process. But Councillor Barnes knows this. This was also explained at the planning meeting he and I attended on the 22nd of June. In fact, it was a major factor in the granting of that 3-year temporary permission at Fir Tree Cottage. 3 years being the time necessary for proper consultation and public scrutiny over the local plan. An important process that shouldn't be circumvented by sneaky motions to council. Flawed in that it's asking the impossible, unnecessary in that the review is already underway, and sneaky in that it's trying to circumnavigate public scrutiny and due process. Therefore, I do not support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. I'm going to go with Councillor Gordon, then Councillor Kirby-Green, and I have Councillor Proshak on the remote. So, Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't agree with Councillor Coleman at all, I'm afraid. In my sort of short time in planning, I have indeed seen a case where the traveller community haven't been accommodated properly, and due to the lack of Rother spaces, if you like, to occupy them, and it's caused a lot of friction between the settled community and the travelling community. And I propose that it's a jolly good idea to get some traveller sites sorted out. And that's my point. Thank you. As soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Kirby-Green.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not really going to talk about the motion, but I'd just like to say that it's nice to see the gentler, kinder politics from the Labour Party. You've been extremely personally rude to Councillor Barnes, in my view. You're very good at throwing accusations at other people, but I think it's very unpleasant to say he's snidey and you kept saying, well, he knows this, he knows this. It's a motion that he's brought. We can all discuss it and we can have our views and we can vote the way we want to. But you always have to be snidey at yourself and bring an unpleasantness to the environment. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Proshak.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that perhaps that Councillor Barnes is perhaps premature in asking for what he wants here, because we are just in 2 weeks, perhaps, going to consultation on accommodation for travellers, gypsy and travellers. I think we do need targets, and we have to work with East Sussex local authorities, which we are going to do, and the South Downs National Park Authority. A joint accommodation needs assessment. What we have to do is actually assess what needs there are in terms of travellers and gypsies and the rest of them. We have already a lot, 14 sites existing. And what we need is evidence of more pitches that are needed or not needed. And we need to get our pitch targets for gypsies and travellers. And so assessing this accommodation is not what we're trying to do now in terms of this motion by Councillor Barnes. And I do understand what the issues are, but we need to progress this through what we have to do as a council. And so I do think what he's suggesting is premature, and we need to progress what we are doing as a council in terms of establishing the need, establishing the sites. And within weeks, we're going out to request for sites. And that request for sites is huge. I mean, huge. It goes with the parish councils, the district councils, the town councils, and also the traveller communities. So
10 seconds, Councillor.
Done. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Before I allow Councillor Barnes to a right to reply, I'm just going to invite Councillor McCourt to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I understand it from what's been said here tonight, there is a review underway, a process that will be gone through, which will expedite this seeking for sites for gypsies and travellers. And I think we should let that review run its course, and we will have a situation where hopefully the gypsy and traveller community will be listened to, because they do face considerable discrimination, and that we can move forward on the basis of balancing the tensions with communities and the gypsies and traveller communities as well. I believe it's important that there has to be a robust, fully comprehensive review that is fit for purpose going forward. So for those reasons, I feel it is premature, this motion, and it should be voted down. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one of the saddest things is to see gypsies and travellers in a field with no facilities, no opportunity to get to any of the local facilities, to have what we believe happened at Pertree Cottage site is fairly random visits from social workers and from people concerned with their education. Those children were just floundering. They had no help at all. We had one of the mothers here who said, well, I can't read and write. What help is there for her? We talk about it not being a priority, not being something we're going to do in a hurry. We desperately need those sites. We need to have those 5 sites into a full swing so that we can have what we were promised 4 or 5 years ago, and to have people on a properly controlled site where they would be properly, I won't say looked after, because of course they are all free-thinking people, but the facilities provided for them would be so much better than many of them are having to endure at the moment. I think it's incredibly sad, and I think it's rather hard-hearted not to have that help going for them as soon as possible. I would go with my husband's 18 months, but 3 years, that's a long time in a child's life. We really do need to take action before that.
Thank you very much. I do beg your pardon. Code of the rules, I'm afraid, are that you
Sit
can't.
down, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Biggs.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In response to Councillor Project about we need more evidence, in Norvium, they cut the locks off the actual playing fields, the traveller site, and they know their rights. When I was on the parish council, we asked them what their problem was. 3 weeks we can stay here for. You can't do nothing at all. We haven't got sites to go to. So if you need evidence, you've only got to go around Northern Rother, and you'll actually see the travellers and the gypsy community looking for sites they can come and stay on. So there is an urgency, and I believe the motion should be carried.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. Does anybody else want to speak before? Oh, Councillor Maynard.
Much indeed, Madam Chairman, and I think that actually behind the politics that's perhaps being played in the chamber this evening, and like my neighbour Councillor Mrs Kerber-Green, I certainly regret the tone of the conversation that Councillor Coleman implied that it was sneaky. It's not sneaky to get something that is of public interest into the public debate, so that for people watching this webcast, so that the public at large can actually see that councillors are doing something about a problem. It is not sneaky to do that. It's not sneaky to try and get an important subject into the public debate. I've declared an interest as a county councillor, so I won't be voting on this issue. But I do think that there is actually agreement within the room, when we've heard other speakers, of saying that this should be a focus of what we're doing. Something needs to be done. But I also want to reassure both the settled community and indeed the traveller community, there is a multi-agency approach in terms of dealing with gypsies and travellers. Certainly, I hear Councillor Mrs Barnes' concerns, but there is a multi-agency approach. There are professional people who are here from all the stakeholders involved in terms of education, in terms of social services, in terms of children's services. There are a raft of support available for travellers. But I do think that Councillor Barnes is right to flag this up in the public domain to say, let's get something done. It's been clarified as to the process that we're going through. As I say, I won't be voting because of my position as a county councillor, but I think it is important and it is healthy to bring things into the public domain that are of public interest. So I don't think that Councillor Barnes should be castigated in any way this evening for bringing the motion to the council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't planning on speaking this evening, but I thought as Ward Councillor for St Mark's, it was very vital to do so. Councillor Protrack says we're just about to do it. I've only been on rather a short time, but we're always just about to do something. We're never quite there. Unfortunately, I think the poor lady whose dog was brutally ran over in Little Common Rec would thank Councillor Barnes for his motion. I think the mother of the 12-year-old autistic child who was beaten by the travellers would thank Councillor Barnes. GLT communities need somewhere to stay, to live. And the traveller community have been coming to Bexhill for generations. They come every year along the coast, and there's nowhere in Rother for them to stay. Unfortunately, they broke the locks on Little Common Rec, along with on the Downs and Sutton Place and by Glyne Gap. It's thankful that nobody else or anything else was hurt, but I fully support Councillor Barnes' motion.
Thank you, Councillor Winter. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. On a slight matter of clarification, we are being asked to undertake a review with the objective of identifying more spaces for the gypsy and traveller community. However, and I will stand corrected by Mr Hook, but I think I'm right in saying the criteria have changed slightly. No longer can somebody say, I don't want travellers here, and to get round the argument that, well, we've got to have somewhere for them, to say, well, they can go over there and apply for planning permission for a bit of land they don't own and don't have access to. Now, I'm not saying that happened in this case, but it has been known. And for that reason, I believe traveller sites are now being looked at as being deliverable, not just allocated, but deliverable. Is everything about that site reasonable to expect the traveller community to use it as a designated site? And I'm by no means certain that the two sites, the two pitches that Councillor Barnes refers to, would meet this criteria. Even if we were able to do something like compulsory purchase within 18 months, I think that is pushing it. So, again, I echo Councillor Coleman's point. We don't want to take a decision that will be superseded by the review that's going to be carried out. So let's let it go to the review. I hope that the result of the review does mean that we can allocate suitable and deliverable sites and meet our allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I will now ask Councillor Barnes to sum up and repeat his motion so we can take a vote on it.
Chairman, ever since I was a parliamentary candidate for the Traveller and Sherman's Guild site in Walsall North, I have taken an interest in the subject. I'm sorry Sam Coleman actually insults my intelligence and integrity. As Chairman of Education in Kent, I also took an interest in the provision of education for traveller children. So I am really quite outraged to be accused of being sneaky on this. Secondly, we are talking about a plan that we approved as a council which lays down the criteria very clearly for gypsy and traveller sites, and we are finding ourselves faced with sites which clearly do not fit that criteria. If we did not think Watermill Inn was satisfactory, then we would not have granted planning permission, even in outline. So really, the notion that somehow we are now going to question that site is a very interesting one, particularly given the pledge which was given by our senior officers that they realised that it was in private ownership. If the private owner didn't cooperate, they were prepared to resort to compulsory purchase. Let us just look at the argument for booting the whole thing into touch. We are about to go out for a call for sites for the new local plan. We then have to consult on that local plan. We have to go through the whole inspection process next year, and we have to satisfy the inspector that we have designated sufficient sites. How long before we actually think those sites will actually be there on the ground? We have at the moment designated sites in our existing local plan, and we need to take steps to make sure they are available to the people who desperately need them. All round the rural area, and I don't know about Bexhill because I'm not a Bexhill councillor, we have families hunting for places where they can actually put their travelling homes, and we find ourselves actually having to give temporary planning permissions on unsatisfactory sites because we have done nothing to implement the local plan. It's time for action rather than actually postponement endlessly.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Spoken from the heart. Could you please read your motion again, and we will take a vote on it.
Oh, it's disappeared.
Would you like me to read it?
If you would read it, I'd be very grateful, Madam Chairman.
So the motion is, the Council asks the Executive to ensure that the 5 pitches allocated in the Development and Site Allocations Local Plan for Gypsies and Travellers at Watermill Lane, 2 of which already have outline planning permission, are brought into use within the next 18 months. This has been proposed by Councillor Barnes and seconded by Councillor Gordon. All those in favour? And all those against? And can we note that Councillor Maynard and Councillor Kirby-Green could not vote because of being county councillors? Are there any abstentions, please? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that motion has been lost, but I think your comments and your passion have been noted by those of us that need to know. So, okay, so thank you everybody very much indeed for your attention tonight. And
can I just say, it's a personal thing, I'd like to congratulate the Chair on her firm handling in very difficult circumstances this evening. I think she did the council
So I declare the meeting closed at 7 minutes past 8. Thank you.
Well done, Chair.
You go first.